What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to Model Airplane Review. It's your host, Dre. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Gemini 200 Spirit Airlines Airbus A320. This model was released in October of 2020, if my memory serves correctly, and this review is being made at the request of one of my subscribers. If you see a model in my collection that I have not reviewed and you'd like me to review it, you may suggest that down below in the comment section, and I will get that started for you shortly. If you'd like to see a database of all of my diecast model airplanes, there's a link to one of those in the description below, so that way you can see which models I own and which ones I have and have not reviewed. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. That being said, it's going to be a pretty long video, so sit back, relax, and let's get this started. So the box is the standard issue Gemini 200 narrow body box at 23 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise, and about 8 centimeters wide. I'll show around the box now. So here's the front, bottom, right side, top, left side, and here's the back side. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to, and if you can, the reflection doesn't look very good. Once you open up the box, you get the model fully assembled, painted, and ready to go, and an included display stand. The included display stand is downright awful, in my opinion. It's very flimsy, and that's especially concerning for this model in particular, because for some reason this model is substantially heavier than other models this size and of this scale. I'm not sure why that is. I think Gemini may have used a different type of metal or different manufacturing process, but this model is way heavier than other 1 to 200 scale Airbus A320s and 737s and aircraft similar of this size. So if displaying this on a display stand is something you want to do, I highly urge you to buy a different display stand along with the model, because this one is very flimsy. Sometimes it doesn't even fit into the model, and if you do display it on this display stand, you do risk dropping the model and causing severe damage to it. So just take that as a warning as well. Well, that was a very nice way to start the review. Anywho, I'm going to give you a quick 360 before I go into my in-depth portion of the review. So this model is 19.5 centimeters for the fuselage length, wingspan is 17 centimeters, and from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer, it's about 6.5 centimeters tall. Decently sized, and it's accurate to 1 to 200 scale. Like I said earlier, this model is pretty heavy, substantially heavier than other models of this scale and similar sizes, and that's primarily because this model is made out of die-cast metal. Starting up the review at the front of the aircraft, here we're going to talk about the nose section of the plane. This is definitely a place I'd like to discuss a lot about, because the nose shape on the model is decent. It's not 100% accurate to the A320, but in Gemini's defense, you can't really 100% replicate a model. But what I don't like about the nose here is the cockpit window printing. You'll notice that the cockpit window printing is kind of low on the nose as compared to where it should be, so that definitely makes for a questionable looking nose profile. Here's the left side of the fuselage, of course. I'll show you the right side soon. As you move down the fuselage, everything else looks pretty solid. Decent amount of painted and printed detail in the form of the A320 details, and of course the giant Spirit title. You'll notice there's a few scratch lines on the title. That's supposed to be there. That was Spirit's old Bearfair logo. They recently changed that to where the scratches are no longer there, so this is one of the older Bearfair liveries. Here's the vertical stabilizer. Everything up here looks pretty good. There is a very noticeable molded detail for the rudder, and yeah, like I said, everything looks pretty good. Printed detail looks good. Paint application looks good. No complaints for the vertical stabilizer. Everything I've said so far about the left side of the fuselage can also be said about the right side of the fuselage, so I won't provide much commentary here. I'm just going to slide the model this way. Here is the right side of the nose that I told you I was going to show you earlier, and wow, okay, that actually looks slanted. You can see the cockpit windows here. They've got a definite slant downwards. I definitely want to cover what the cockpit looks like from the front of the plane, but yeah, printing on the cockpit windows definitely suffered with this model. Moving on to the wings in this model are pretty solid. There is clear molded detail to replicate the control surfaces, and there's a decent selection of printed and painted detail, all of which looks pretty good. Of course, you can see the metallic paint on the leading edge slats. There's 2 different colors of gray to replicate the different wing areas. Yeah, printing looks pretty solid up here too, no complaints there. And the wings are pretty rigid. Of course, like I said, this model is pretty heavy, and I think that's due to high density metal, and as a result the wings are pretty rigid. Of course, they're still fragile, so be careful when handling the model. The wingtips look pretty good. The sharklet shape looks actually pretty solid here. You can see the Spirit.com logo there, or the link there. And on the inside of the winglets, we get the Howdy title there. This is not present on the newer, updated Bearfair liveries, so this is also an indicator that this is one of the older ones. Under the wing, there's not really much to see. There's just a minimal amount of molded detail and some painted detail here and there. Moving on to the rear section of the airplane, here we can see the horizontal stabilizers. These look pretty solid. There's some printed and painted detail on there, and the molded detail for the elevators looks pretty solid. APU looks fine. There isn't really anything to replicate the exhaust. There's actually a defined line right there. That's kind of strange. I only ever see this on plastic models. So yeah, there is a defined line right on the APU exhaust. Not sure what happened there. And here on the bottom of the plane, there's really not that much else to see either, just the APU access doors, which look pretty solid. Moving on to the engines. Engines on this model are decent. They're not the best, they're not the worst. I noticed that the Home of the Bearfair titles are kind of printed a little bit upwards on the engine, if you can understand what I'm saying. I don't see them exactly aligned with the side. I'm not 100% sure if they're supposed to be, but that's something I do notice. So if you do know better, please let me know down below in the comment section. Here's the fan blade detail. Okay, what happened in there? I can see what appears to be maybe an attempt at a spinner spiral right there. You can see where my pointer is. I think that's that. I'm not sure. And the fan blades, they do spin. Barely. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. On the other side, yeah, that's an attempted spinner spiral there. Wow. So they definitely messed it up on the left engine, but the right engine looks a little bit better. And the fan blades, I think they might be supposed to spin. I'm not 100% sure, but they don't spin that well in this model. Aside from that, though, detail on the bottom of the engine is really nice. You can see everything is clearly defined down here too. So overall, the engines are decent, just the fan blade stuff is kind of awkward. For aerial details, this model features 3D lights and antennas. There are 3 antennas and 1 3D light on the top of the fuselage. There's a large, I think this is a UHF communications one. I'm not 100% sure what these antennas are called, but yeah, there's 2 large antennas, one at the front of the fuselage, one at the kind of rear section of the plane, and one right before the vertical stabilizer. This one's a little bit smaller. These look pretty solid, no complaints there. And the attachment of these was also solid to my memory, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I do remember I did receive this model kind of damaged, and I'll explain why later. And the light here, it's a 3D light here. It's a gem. It looks pretty good. Okay, I think I remember now. This antenna was broken on this model. I had to re-glue it, and you can tell the alignment still isn't really all that well. It's kind of bent towards the left side of the aircraft. On the bottom of the aircraft, we've got 4 antennas. We got one large one right here, and 3 very small and fragile ones in the front section of the airplane, midsection, and at the very rear section here. Can't even see that, right here. So yeah, these are very fragile, though it's kind of hard to break them with the way they're glued, but they're still fragile, so be careful when handling the model. The one in the rear in particular, that one always pokes me because I'm clumsy with the model, so just take that into account. Moving on to the landing gear. Landing gear on this model is, wow, okay, I see a damage spot that I never saw. So this strut right here is supposed to be completely straight. It appears to have been bent somehow. I never even noticed this, and I've owned the model for more than 6 months now, holy cow. But yeah, the details on the gear are pretty solid. The wheels do roll, so I won't complain there. They are permanently extended, so you can't retract them by removing them or anything like that. They are permanently extended. And the nose gear is also pretty solid. This is what came bent that I was talking about earlier. This is what was damaged. I just had to bend it backwards, but yeah, it came pretty badly bent, and you can see it's still a little loose, but that is to allow for the nose gear to swivel and rotate. The nose wheels also spin pretty well as well. So far in the review, the model has seemed pretty solid, except for a few awkward things here and there that are frankly minor details. This is where this model is going to suffer a lot. Look at the wing flex, cockpit window printing, and gear balance. Gear balance seems okay, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I can't really tell with the camera angle, so use your own judgment there. But the wing flex, it's way too high, and it's also imbalanced. I think the right wing is bent upwards a little bit more than the left wing. And don't even get me started on the cockpit window printing. That is so slanted. Ouch, that does not look good at all. So yeah, this is where the model loses a lot of its quality points there. Well, that was a sudden end to the review. That's the conclusion of my in-depth review. Now time for my opinion and recommendation. Overall, it's a decent model, but it really lacks in that wing flex and cockpit window printing, and that's a pretty major aspect of model airplanes for me. So, do I recommend this model? Honestly, I don't. Really, that wing flex, the cockpit window printing, and yeah, just the imbalances and the awkward things, the whole combination of that really doesn't sit well with me. And I know I'm very picky with my models, but even for the average Joe, those are more than enough to notice that something's up with the model. So at a distance, it's hard to see, but when you look at it up close, it's one of those things that you can't unsee once you see it. So I don't really recommend this model. It is the only die-cast 1/200 scale Airbus A320 current engine options, though, in the Spirit livery. So yeah, this is kind of your only option, and it's shot up in price these days. It's crazy. But yeah, it's it's not really the best. Alright, well, that's it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Stay tuned for more aerospace content. Like, comment, and subscribe. Suggest your reviews. I'll try and get those done as soon as I can and as soon as possible, because I'm going to be going to college soon, so I won't be able to do them pretty soon. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Happy collecting. Be careful when buying your models. See you later.